Okay. So thank you everyone for joining this Office of Research and Innovation presentation. Our presentation today will be Research 101, Introduction to Research. And we have Dr. Shween Isle, who's the Director of Research Development in the School of Health Sciences. My name is Nathaniel Steinlicht. I'm a Research Project Coordinator in the Office of Research Innovation, and I'll be sort of starting things off and then um, following things up at the end with some ways for how Office of Research and Innovation can help you in your research. So just to give you kind of an overview today and to just make sure slides are changing and everything, right? I'm seeing yes. Okay. Just want to make sure. Already had some Zoom technical problems today. But we'll basically be covering 4 different topics. The first will be, what is a research question? How do you develop a good one? And how you can use that sort of as your starting point for your research. Then following into the steps from you have a question, so now what do you do with it? Then finally, I'll jump back in after Dr. Schmidl is done talking to talk about resources that are available both from ORI as well as USD. And then finally, we'll get any questions if there are any. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Schmidl.
Okay. For the record, it's actually Schweinle or
Oh,
Schweinle if you speak
sorry.
German. But no, it's cool.
Sorry.
You can't imagine the different pronunciations I've heard of my last name. So when Nathaniel asked me to get involved in this, I reflected some on what my experience has been. And I'm also a professor of biostatistics in the School of Health Sciences. I teach primarily in the PA program. I've been here for 15 years. I've also been a professor of quantitative psychology and a professor of, assistant professor of educational research at University of Southern Mississippi and an assistant professor of quantitative psychology at Boise State. So I've been doing this a while, and I'm kind of the person people go to when they're trying to get research going. And these are my observations. Take them or leave them because they're not empirically supported, other than my anecdote here. So what I most frequently see when or encounter when people come to me for help on research is they don't have a good question. Or they haven't really thought about what their question is. They tend to get hung up in procedures or methods or things like that. And really, what drives a piece of research is the question itself. What is it that you want to know that you do not? It defines everything you're going to do in that research. It drives all of your decision making in that research because research is fraught with compromise, right? There are all kinds of compromises that have to be made along the way for a number of reasons I'll touch on later. But it's the question that drives your decision making. It frames the analyses that you might have me help you with or that you might do yourself. And it will frame how the results are described and depicted. So next slide, please. So what makes a good research question? One is it's original. I have a fair number of people who have approached me over the years who have, well, this is what I want to know because this is what I'm seeing in the classroom or this is what I'm seeing with patients. And I'm like, okay, have you looked in the literature? Has that already been answered? Because there's a good chance somebody else saw it too and answered it some time ago. So start reading, get into the literature, figure out what your search terms are. My own graduate program of research was on domestic violence, the social psychology of men who are violent with their partners. I can't. I was thinking about it driving in today. How many different terms you have to search to get a good smattering of literature on domestic violence? They include things like interpersonal violence, domestic or partner aggression, wife battery, just scads of terms, and it took me a good semester to kind of figure out just how to search. And then you have to ask yourself, is this question worth answering? Is this going to help anything at all? So read. That's my first bit of advice to help you form questions. And then ask yourself, is the question answerable? Is it ethical? We would know a lot more about humans if we were not bound by the ethics of research on humans. And I'm not advocating that. I'm not advocating that we abolish IRBs or IACUC animal protection committees. I think they serve a very important role, and they keep researchers in line from doing things that hopefully haven't happened since Nazi Germany. Um, another question is it, do you have the money to do it? Is the money there? Is is it possible to answer the question with the resources available to you? Is it possible to answer the question at all? Because frequently people are wondering about a thing, and you kind of figure out, well, we can't really answer that question. Okay, fine, go back to the lit and form a new question or reshape it. Let the lit guide you. And a good research question is one that you can answer and that it can be answered. It's ethical to do so. You have the resources available, and you have the time. And yeah, time's a resource. Money's never mind. Anyhow, you get the point. So next slide, please. I tossed this in here because it's the thing I recommend most frequently to people who are kind of getting started, and it's just to put together an annotated bibliography. Anytime you find any article, even remotely relevant to your research question, take a few notes on it. Write down the authors and the year, or I actually write my annotated bibs with the whole APA citation in it so that I can copy and paste it into a paper, because I grew up in the days before automatic citation software. If you want an example of an annotated bib I've done over the years, I'm happy to send you one. Send me an email. And those notes in that annotated bib are for you. They're not for anybody else. So, write them for yourself to remind you what that article's about. That way you're not having to go back and reread the article to find the bits of information you want. How many sources do you need in an annotated bib? That's hard to say. It depends upon what's available in the literature. If I'm writing a book chapter, I will typically have between 100 and 150. If it's for a research article, I might have as many as 200. I just keep reading, keep adding to my bib. I'm not interested in trying to organize all that information into something just yet. I'm just accumulating information in notes. And keep in mind, you might accumulate a whole bunch of resources in your annotated bib, but you probably won't cite all of them. Don't worry about it. You've read them. They've informed you. Your research will become stronger, and you will become a more learned person simply having looked at that research and taken a few notes on it. Fair enough? Next slide, please. So what's next? So you have a good question. It's original. It's doable. I didn't put it in just yet, but I'll get to this in a minute. But look, as you're reading the extant literature, as you're forming the question, you might start getting some ideas about how to answer. What methods are common in that field? In psychology, survey methods are pretty common. In animal behavior, they run rats through mazes. It's how do questions get answered in all of this research? And again, it's time to re-ask yourself, do I have the money and time and collaborators? And ultimately, is there a statistical analysis that can help me answer this question? I'm going to say this right now, but I'm going to revisit it later. Once you have a question that's original and you think you can do it, that's a good time to talk to a statistician. Okay, that's a good time to approach me, or approach me, and I will refer you to somebody that can help you. There are several really good graduate students, and they need publications. They need publications as more than anybody right now. I'm a full professor. What do I need pubs for? But anyhow, and my wife was also a statistics professor in the School of Education here. She's now the dean. We're connected to all the good statisticians around campus, so we can help you find somebody that can work with you. And if it is a graduate student, we're typically happy to help that graduate student with when they run into a hiccup. You know, there's actually a decent network of people willing to step in. Do you have enough people to do it? That's always a question too. Do I need to bring in more people? Next slide, please. So as you're designing a methodology, ask yourself, what's my research design? Is it experimental, quasi-experimental, correlational, descriptive, qualitative? When it comes to qualitative work, I'm not going to be much help, but I can refer you to my wife, and she can refer you to somebody who over in the School of Ed who's really good with qualitative work, if that's your bag, if that's going to help you answer your question. So you know. And then what makes a good research design? Number one, it answers the research question as best it can be answered, given the constraints of time, ethics, money, collaborators, all of that stuff. And it's ultimately one that you can analyze yourself, or you approach a statistician. I refer to us frequently as the lawyers of research. My analogy is this. Nathaniel, cut me off if I'm running long, okay? Is the lawyers of research. Now, if you wanted to write a will, okay, you could pull out a Post-it note, write, upon my, when I die, I want everything to go to my children, period, and sign it. I can pretty well guarantee they're going to wind up in probate court. Or you could go to a lawyer and have the lawyer write up a will and save your children the anguish and expense of trying to go to court and duke this thing out. That's what statisticians are really good for. We know all the rules. So, and I don't know, yeah, that's our bag. So next slide, please. So like I said before, getting a statistician involved when you have a good question and some sense of how you would like to approach it, we can often help you design the method and help you design. And we're thinking about how we're going to analyze it. If what analysis is going to be necessary. We might not do the analysis ourselves. You might be able to do it. We can help you do that. And there's a thing called statistical design, which is kind of designing your method in a way that's going to yield data that is analyzable in a way that will answer your question. And finally, this is something I like to do with collaborators, particularly if they're relatively new to research, and that is, let me set up a data entry spreadsheet for you, so that when your data starts coming, I know if you're doing online surveys, you can dump your data into whatever format. Excel is my favorite, but your statistician can recommend a way to get the data to them in a form that they can use efficiently. Because I don't know how many times people have approached me after they've gotten their data, and the design of the database is just so unusable to me. It would take me weeks to get it into a form that I can use and ultimately analyze. I'm happy to set up a data entry spreadsheet for you. It takes me 5 minutes and saves us both a lot of time and heartache. Okay, you've got all this ready to go. Now do your design. Go do your method. Go do, and however you've conceived of your design, and if you've written a grant, then you already have in writing, in ink, a design that you're kind of locked into. Follow it closely. Keep notes on the deviations. If you're going to deviate from the design, then discuss it with your collaborators. Don't make changes midstream without letting them know, so they can prepare for what's coming. Does that make sense to everybody? Good. Next slide, please. So then you have to ask yourself, which journal do I want to submit it to? Once I've gotten the data, I've gotten it analyzed, I've written it up, or the team has written it up. Well, typically, if you're new to research, this is where an annotated bibliography really helps out, is what journal seems to most frequently appear in your annotated bibliography, then that's probably the journal that's going to be best for submitting to. Yeah. And go to the journal's instructions for all authors. They're almost all online these days, and figure out what you have to do to submit there. Follow those instructions. And if you have questions, contact the journal office. Frequently, you're going to get like the journal secretary or the journal manager, but actually those people are probably better or more learned in the rules for that journal than the editors themselves, if that makes sense. You don't want to be a pest, but as Robin Miskimans, who since retired was a professor of biochemistry here at USD for many years, said, "Don't piss off the reviewers," and her other phrase was, "Don't piss off the editors." You don't want to make them mad at you. And then you submit your paper and wait for the reviews. And meet with your team to discuss the reviewer comments. You'll get back reviews. Be patient with these. Some journals have a turnaround time of a couple weeks. Some journals can be many months. Some journals, it might be over a year before you get back reviewer comments. I think, in my experience, a lot of that has to do with how well the overall editor of that journal rides herd on his or her reviewers, if that makes sense. Some editors really kind of crack the whip. For instance, I'm the statistical editor for the Journal of Physician Assistant Education, and we have a 2-week timeline for our reviews. And if we don't get them back in 2 weeks, then we're going to start hearing about it. Fair enough. Next slide, please. Once you get the reviews back, this is my strategy, and I'm a unique individual, and I know each of us is, but get mad and then get over it. I will get back the reviews, I'll get mad, I'll stick them in a drawer for a week and get over it, and then come back and decide how I'm going to actually tackle this in a productive way. I don't know how many times I've really struggled with having to turn what was originally a research article into a statistics lesson. And that's really frustrating. That's not what the paper's really about. This isn't a stats lesson. So it's a piece of research. So yeah, anyhow. And then you respond directly to what the reviewers have written. You write things like, reviewer 1 noted that whatever, we didn't use a semicolon appropriately. Fine. Okay, cool. You say, thank you for pointing this out. We have revised the manuscript on page XX, whatever page it was, in response to this suggestion. And keep in mind, even though, like I said, I get mad, reviewers, they're trying to help you make the paper better. So that's why you got to get over the anger or the anxiety or depression some people experience. And remember, they're trying to help you make the paper better. That is their job. Whatever the reviewers are asking for, it might be wording, it might be additional analyses, it might be a different analysis, it might be adding a citation. It's not uncommon that a reviewer, at least one or more of the reviewers of your manuscript is somebody that's an author somewhere in your annotated bibliography, and they want to see their paper cited. Okay, fine. It's good for them in their careers. Figure out a way to add the suggested citation into your manuscript, because remember, it's a blind review. Most all of them are blind, so they don't know who you are and you don't know who they are. But if the reviewer suggests citing a certain paper, then find a way to cite that. It'll help. It's not that much work, and it'll help you get your paper published with less hassle. So next slide, please. These are resources available to you. The ORI is fantastic. They can help with grant writing, project management, all kinds of support. The USD Writing Center is fantastic. Don't be afraid to go in there. As best I understand it, and I don't think it's changed, it's been a while since I inquired, but the Writing Center is actually funded to some degree on the basis of how much help they provide to people. Does that make sense? So they're happy to work with you. I've had trouble in my career writing what are really sometimes really complicated statistical passages that really might only be a paragraph, but I'm trying to say something that's really deep and dense without writing an entire paper on it. So they're very good at that. You can ask the USD librarians. They're fantastic. And again, the libraries in part get funding on the basis of how much business they get. So don't be afraid to approach those people. They're good at it. And they know how to find stuff. How can I put this? I've published with a librarian several years ago. And while working with her, it became very clear to me that you never want to piss off a librarian. They can find out anything about you that you don't want anybody to know. They just know. And they can find resources for you. And don't forget Google Scholar. There is so much available online through Google Scholar, which has grown into this colossal hydra. I think it's the new Kraken. Don't be afraid to search Google Scholar. I have to remind people of that frequently. Also, for the sake of your career, and the other reason I mention it is you can set up a profile in Google Scholar that will track the number of citations your work is getting. So anytime one of your published articles gets cited, it keeps track of that. And you can go look at your citation index anytime you want. And if you're, say, on a tenure track and you have to make the argument that your work is actually having impact in your field, you can pull up Google Scholar, print the page, stick it in your TNP or TNP dossier, and say, yes, my stuff is having impact. It'll give you an H index and an I index or whatever it's called. Google Scholar is pretty handy. Okay, next slide, please.
All right, and this is kind of where I jump back in. So Will had already mentioned talking about what ORI does, and we do a lot of different things. So this kind of just summarizes some of the things we do. We have done a lot of work recently with helping faculty find and develop grant applications. And this can be whatever you're interested in. We've done everything from nursing training to substance abuse training to, boy, a bunch of other things to early childhood education. We've run the gamut from both, more research focused to programs, which you can also then turn into research too, depending on how you write the grant and what the grant's willing to fund. So we're helping you find those applications, navigate all of the different funding opportunities, and then provide some help to you as you're writing that proposal. We also try to bring together faculty interested around different topics. As Will had mentioned earlier, it's a lot easier if you have collaboratives to help do research. And so we have 3 that are currently working right now, one on complementary and alternative medicine, maternal and child health, and then telehealth. And they're all doing great work, doing different things, addressing different problems. But we're also open to others. We've recently been thinking about doing one specifically focused on rural health, just because of where South Dakota is. A lot of the health care provided in this state is rural health, and there are a lot of unique challenges and research opportunities around that. But if you have other ideas, or if you know there's 2 or 3 faculty working together on a topic, we're happy to help support that and formalize that and bring that together. We really want to promote research discussions among faculty, and we're already starting to see those grow into grant applications, research ideas, ways to improve way to improve our education models for health sciences and etc. We also do support management of projects, although on a little more limited basis, helping you do some of the things that you might not want to do, such as managing a budget or helping to pull together and make sure everything's on time. A lot of that communication channels is something ORA staff has done in the past. And if you want to learn more about this, we had a training last month on how a project manager can help you do all the things you don't want to do and leave you more time to do the exciting things. And then the last is to grow faculty and staff knowledge. So we do trainings like this. We try to do one once a month during school, so fall and spring semesters. We're always looking for other ideas, things that you might be interested in. So feel free to let us know. And with that, I will move to Thank you. And then also, if there are any questions, you can feel free to come off small group, or you can put them in the chat. So I see one from Clara. At what point in the research should you go to IRB? How do you know your research needs IRB approval? And well, I know you're very versed in IRB processes, so I can let you take that. Nope, you're on mute.
I think "you're on mute" is the most spoken phrase in the last 2.5 years. Anyhow, yeah, I chaired the USD IRB for 9 years, which was, and we handled all of USD, all of the medical school, and all of the Veterans Administration research in North and South Dakota. So yeah, we were busy. Anyhow, you approach the IRB when you have a sense of your question and your method. And the IRB is for human subjects, IACUC is for animal subjects. And don't ask me to remember what the heck IACUC, that acronym, stands for. I'm not going to come up with it. So you approach the IRB when you know what your question is, what you're going to do to people, and who you're going to do it to. Does that make sense? Once you have those three things figured out, you're ready to write up an IRB application. Does that answer your question, Clara? Good.
Yeah, thank you.
And for the record, I don't think it's changed since I've left the IRB. But one of the big things that I really pushed hard in when I was chairing the IRB was, instead of being such robocops, that we were there to help. So they are not, unless something's changed, they are not afraid at all, and they're happy to help you with an IRB application. And here's a quick pointer about the IRB application. They don't want to know all of the background and all the literature and all the fancy terms you've accumulated in your bib and in your reading and in your learning. What they want to know is, what do you want to do and who do you want to do it to? Does that make sense? And as succinctly, with the fewest number of $20 words you can write that up, the quicker your application is going to get through the IRB. If it's confusing, you're going to get held up. And that was the most common thing that I saw holding up people's IRB applications, is nobody could understand what they had written. And it's not because it was poorly written, it was because nobody could understand it. It was in a vernacular that none of us were familiar with. And it was too dense. It doesn't need to be that dense. And most of the stuff, if you're doing survey research, things like that, the IRB turnaround at this university, we had it down to about an hour for innocuous research. If you're going to do something medical or something more serious or more risky, I guess is a better term, it can take longer.
And I will say, we do generally advise faculty that if you're doing any kind of research, it's always good to, IRB does what's called a determination. It's not a formal application. It's abbreviated. It's very much like Will said, of what are you doing, who's involved, and who are you doing it to? And that goes straight to the staff. It doesn't go to the board. And that just gives them a general sense of, okay, yes, you need to do the full application, which is much longer. Or no, you don't need to do the application. This isn't what's called research. And we encourage all faculty to go through that, because you never know. Some journals require you to provide proof that you received approval or you received an exemption from your IRB. So it's always a good thing to have on hand in your records when you're doing any kind of research.
Yeah, thank you, Nathaniel. And it's also, once you get that letter from them saying that this does not require IRB review, it's like a get out of jail free card, because if something does go wrong, the IRB has reviewed it. Does that make sense? It's no longer your liability. If something, you're handing out paper surveys about people's hand washing habits, right? Pretty common these days. They say, you know, this really isn't, or this is, yeah, go ahead, go do it. and something goes wrong. Somebody amputates a hand on the paper of your survey. You're fine. It's not your problem. Well, you feel bad about it, certainly. Other questions?
I'm not seeing anything, but we'll give a moment. Otherwise, we'll let people go early and enjoy the rest of their lunch hour. All right. Well, I think we're going to end it here. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Again, this will be available on our YouTube channel if you want to watch, want to go through any of those steps. Always happy to answer any questions. You can reach us at ori@usd.edu. Also, a couple other links here. This is our listserv. We send out things probably once a week, whether it's training opportunities, reminders about different things. We send out reminders about those work groups. So if you want to join the next one, feel free. You can also email us. We also do, as I mentioned earlier, grant searches. So follow the link below. And also our YouTube channels here too. So I'll include that on. I'll send out the slides to everyone who registered, so you'll have access to them and you can click on any of these links. All right, thank you everyone for attending today, and have a good rest of your afternoon.
Take care, everybody.